Hello, my name is Ken Small and I'm an architect in Las Vegas, Nevada. Ssa Architecture, the firm I'm with, is fortunate enough to be on the first page when you search for Las Vegas architects in our immediate vicinity. And so we get a lot of questions from people who want to do projects that could or could not involve us. And so from that, I have created about 60 videos, most of which are frequently asked question videos, and I would encourage you to watch all of them. This particular frequently asked question is going to be answered on two videos, one for single-family residential and one for other projects. So this is the one for single-family residential, and the question is, who can draw plans in Las Vegas, Nevada? And the answer is architects, residential designers, structural engineers, civil engineers, interior designers, and the homeowner. There can also be some other exceptions from some other design professionals, but these are the ones that we would normally expect that you would consider using. So under what circumstances would I expect to choose between a licensed architect and a residential designer? And the answer is if you have a fairly budget-oriented project, then this is one of those situations where you might want to consider a residential designer because they're less expensive. However, if your project is primarily driven by wanting to have cool aesthetics, then an architect who has more of a background in aesthetics from having gone to college for 5 or 6 years primarily to learn aesthetics is probably going to be a better choice for you. Many people, because they watch these TV shows about bidding, think the first thing they're going to do is bid their architect. And so if you're calling through the listings online to find out whoever worked the cheapest, really what you're doing is you're seeking out the lowest quality services that you can possibly find. And if that's the procedure you're using to select architects, then you probably shouldn't select amongst the architects. You should try to select among the residential designers. So the reason is that there's more education and learning requirements for an architect than there are for residential designer, and most architects have offices with overhead and errors and omissions insurance and college graduates working for them, and so their fees tend to be significantly higher than the residential designers. So that said, there are a lot of residential designers that are entirely capable and competent and might be a good choice for you. The other design professionals that you might want to consider. First of all, highly project dependent. So if you want to, if you've just bought a lot in a gated community and you're going to build a house for a couple $1,000,000, then I would say hire an architect, pay for the premium service, preferably find one that's well integrated with interior design, and you're going to have a house that you can really be proud of. And the larger it is above $1 million, the more likely that you should go that route and not consider any other, in my opinion. Under what circumstances would you consider, for instance, an interior designer and have an equally good job as an architect? And the answer would be, of course, an interior remodeling project on existing residence. So they're properly licensed and educated and capable of leading a project like that, and may be a good choice for you, again, depending on what it is you're trying to achieve. Also, a structural engineer or a civil engineer may be a good choice for your residential project. So if you're adding a freestanding 2-car garage onto your existing house lot, then you probably don't really need an architect for that. You can just have a structural engineer draw it for you, depending on where it is on the site and how visible it is from the street and what your existing house looks like and all that. Maybe a good choice for you. Normally when you hire an architect or a residential designer, you still have a structural engineer involved, but in this case you'd just be talking about having the structural engineer be the lead design professional. And of course, in any of these circumstances, you may want to have more than one design professional, but there has to be a lead. So imagine for a minute that you're going to develop a large agricultural piece of property that was previously nothing, desert land, and you're going to do a lot of grading, and eventually it's going to become some type of a farm. Then you might want to hire a civil engineer as the primary design professional, because trying to work out the water drainage and how all the water flows and all those kind of things is going to be the primary concern. And maybe a little house for a caretaker on the property is not that big a deal. Or maybe even if it's going to be your house on the property, that's not your primary concern. You're more concerned about the agricultural implications and getting grading right. All these different design professionals can be good choices depending on what it is that you're doing. And the state law doesn't really differentiate. I mean, you can try to design a magnificent mansion with your structural engineer as the lead design professional, but more than likely it's not going to end up as good looking as if you hired an architect. So other options, the contractor that's going to be building it could design build it. I mentioned that one in the first list, but definitely that's a good choice for some. If you're planning on remodeling your kitchen or bathroom, since the project is not so comprehensive that it's difficult to envision what it's going to look like, then for again, I hate to say affordable housing, but for moderately priced housing, something in the under 2,500 square foot house size, this can be a very logical solution for you, because you're not going to want to put a lot of money into remodeling your kitchen or bathroom. Maybe you are, in which case, again, choose another design professional, interior designer, an architect. But if you're budget oriented, then your general contractor can do a good job of design building for you, assuming they have the right background. There are some that have good aesthetic taste and are capable of doing a good job for you, and there are others that are not. They're just the ones in charge of banging the nails together after somebody figures out how to make it look pretty. So last but not least is homeowner design drawings. And in Nevada, it's allowed for a homeowner to draw their own plans. And this can work, but again, strongly dependent on you as a homeowner and what it is you're trying to achieve, and a lot of other issues. But what I will say about it is that it's almost a joke in the architect's office that a $100 piece of software plus a couple weeks of practice is not the equivalent of a 5-year degree in architecture, or a 4-year bachelor's and a 2-year master's, plus a 3-year internship, plus taking the architect's exam. So you just don't know what you don't know. And as long as you've made up your mind to be satisfied with however it comes out, that may work for you. One of the problems is if you make a design error that has to be worked out during the construction process, just one mistake can cost you more than the entire services of a design professional. It can hold up everything. It can make plans take forever to go through the building department. But it is allowed. And so again, if you're trying to build one-car garage as a freestanding building onto your lot, and you're in a low budget area of town and you only got just a minimum amount of money to build it with, you can attempt this. And I wouldn't really advise it, but you can. And probably you will ultimately need the assistance of another design professional, presumably a structural engineer, to be able to get all the way down the road. But nevertheless, you can draw what you want to draw, do what you want to do. For interior remodeling projects that are relatively simple, if you're not removing any load-bearing walls, that might also be an option. Just keep in mind that all the wonderful software that they sell is not really that smart, and so it's not capable of advising you on how to avoid problems or do things more affordable, or to help you understand that whatever you just drew is going to be ugly. So you can go ahead and give that a shot if you feel that it's appropriate for your project. Some things that require permitting that aren't complicated at all, then that may be a great choice. And so just consider that as one of your options. What are the upside and downside of all of these things? Well, the upside of architects and interior designers is you're more likely to get a very aesthetically pleasing result. Again, this is all driven by your personal preference, so those people are probably more adept at getting your building to where you'll think it's good looking when you're done, and so will your friends and neighbors. Residential designer, next step down the line. I've known residential designers that are as good a designer in terms of aesthetics and beautification of the house as other architects that I know. And I've known some residential designers who have no taste at all. If architecture was food, they wouldn't know butterscotch from jalapenos. And so choose carefully and look at their experience in projects that they've done, and keep in mind that when you're working this category, you're trying to produce an end result that the client likes, not one that a future client will like. So if an old client did something and you don't like it, then as long as they liked it and they were happy with it, the design professional did a good job. And you can't really hold it against an architect that, as an example, he designed a house to be green and purple, and you think it's awful. I'll tell you right now, I would assume on seeing that the client insisted that they wanted a green and purple house, and that's why it was drawn that way. That may not be true, but it's more often true than not. So, what about money? Well, sometimes general contractors will give you a free set of plans, even for a whole house. The problem with that is that they own the plans, so if you want to build that house, you have to pay them to build it, and they set the price. So design build can work okay for things like a bathroom remodeling, where without the drawings, the contractor can figure out it's so many square feet of tile, so many square feet of carpet, this new toilet, that new sink, and count them all up, and then give you a fixed price for all of it, including the plans, and draw the plans afterwards. That's the category that I see that the average consumer might consider using a design build contractor for. But as soon as you take a step above that, you're probably better off with a residential designer or an interior designer. Some interior designers are more expensive than architects are, so it's not inherent in their field that they're going to be cheaper. But most residential designers are significantly cheaper than architects are on residential work. Of course, their limitation is they can only do residential work. For interior designers, it's more dependent on what their business setup is like. So if it's somebody who's doing this out of their house with no employees and what have you, then again, they tend to be more price competitive. So that's another option for you. When you look at it, it's not necessarily true that you get what you pay for. So it's okay to ask what the price will be from more than one person, because when design professionals are busy, they don't have a sign on the door that says we're busy. So you could get a very high price from one design professional and another one fair price in the same market, because the first one was just busy and they thought they'd have to do your job on overtime. And this can happen with general contractors also, so it's something to watch out for. But if the design professional you're interviewing seems generally interested in trying to help you on your project, and you're willing to work within the time frame that they're available for, then you should get similar pricing from most architects. Comparing architects to architects, similar pricing on modest size, average size housing. When you get up into the more expensive housing, the architects that are geared to do that are more expensive, and that's because they have facilities within their organization that are geared towards doing that, and they have to be maintained. So much as interior designers have a library of fabric samples or furniture catalogs or what have you, high-end residential design architects have to maintain kind of a palette and a familiarity with the latest, greatest stuff. And so that tends to push the pricing up. It's really fun work to do large, high-end residential work, and I have done it in the past and enjoyed doing it. And we did one a couple of years ago, and I enjoyed it very much. So it's possible to find a general practitioner in architecture who's willing to do that for fair pricing and put in the time to familiarize themselves with all the various cool stuff that you want to put in a high-end residence to do that work. All that said, when you're trying to get pricing, generally as you're calling through all the design professionals that exist, trying to find the lowest price or what have you, you learn more as you go. And so you sound like a more intelligent end user talking to the third architect than you do on talking to the first. So it tends to give you a little bit of a apples and oranges price comparison, because when architects are talking to potential customers, they're looking for some level of knowledgeability and rational thinking to work with. So try to look at them all with the same eye, if that makes any sense. Try to gather up as much information about what it was that you wanted or what it is that you want, and collect photographs or ideas, and have them ready to begin the discussionary process about what it is you want. Finding design professionals, I don't really like Google, but DuckDuckGo or Google or something like that. You can search by zip code, which would tend to find an office that's near your project, but not necessarily. The real preference is to look for work that you like and referrals, and if you've seen something they did that you liked, then go with that person. Just remember that your design professional's total profit for the job is going to be about 1/10 of what the general contractor's profit is. So by having a proper set of plans or construction documents and paying a fair price for them, if you're able to avoid construction delays or construction problems, headaches during the construction process, you might recover the design professional's full cost in the construction process. So on a high-end residence, the contractor might make 10 or 20% profit. The architect might charge 10 or 15%, maybe 20% for design fees, and then out of the architect's 10 or 20% design fees, 10 or 20% of that would potentially be the architect's profit. So trying to grind down the architect's profit to save doesn't make as much sense. as you would think. It's almost counterintuitive, but if you got a price from an architect who thought he was giving you a competitive price, and then you turned back around and said, I really want to make sure that you do the best possible job on this and put every moment of time into it that you can to try to help me avoid making mistakes myself or having problems during the construction process, and I'd rather pay you 50% more than what you're asking. That actually probably would end up in you paying net less money total for the construction of the project, at least if the architect's conscientious about it. So bidding architects doesn't make any sense because you don't know what you want when you're trying to hire them. Bidding plumbers makes sense because you have a set of plumbing drawings from the architect or his consultant to show the plumber precisely what it is you want. So it's more possible to sharpen up your pencil as a plumber than it is to sharpen up your pencil as an architect. And when you hire the architect or the residential designer or the interior designer or whoever, you're probably going to hire them on a fixed price process, and at least for the architectural work. And then once you're into it, they may decide to try to help push their profit up by spending less time on the plans, or they may decide to try to put in extra effort to make your house super wonderful, at least in their opinion. And all that's driven by how the process goes. So if it seems like you can't make up your mind, or you're arguing with your significant other in the architect's office over what the end result will be, these are the kind of things that just skew the you get what you pay for thing way out of line. So don't do those if you can. Anyway, with that said, going to the Architects Board website and searching to find architects or residential designers or interior designers is a good choice. Looking for them locally. It might make more sense to try to find someone who's near your office or where you'll be working from, or near your existing house where you'll be working from, than it does to find someone who's near the project that's about to be built. But one or the other may offer a small cost savings or a little bit of a time advantage. Generally speaking, I would say it's really marginal, and it's more about how interested the architect is in doing a good job for you and how much time you're able to spend on getting the project to come out right. So that's the overview. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please like it. I hope you're signed in so you can click on like and subscribe. We have over 60 videos now that talk about a lot of topics, some of which are related to this. We're not currently marketing for anything under $1 million residence, so if you're up well over $1 million, we'd love to help you. My office is a general practice of architecture, so we do a little bit of everything, which keeps it interesting for us and fresh for you. I'm with Ssa Architecture. We're at 7040 Laredo Street, Suite C, Las Vegas, Nevada, 702-873-1718. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.